Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin. I was 22, just freshly certified as a medical assistant when my mom called me. She was crying. She didn't even say hello first. Instead, it was just, "I need you to do me a favor, honey. Please, just this once." I hadn't even gotten settled in my new job, but I was still managing a lot of things, shifting schedules, getting used to the pace, and of course, still living at home. She explained that Grandpa's 85th birthday was coming up, and she needed help organizing the party. I could hear the stress in her voice, like the weight of it all was too much. She begged, "I don't know who else to ask, but I can't do it all myself, sweetie. I promise it's just this one time." I hesitated for a second, but she was already pulling at the heartstrings. I knew how much this meant to her. So, I caved. I agreed to handle everything: guest list, food orders, decorations, even parking arrangements. I had no idea what I was signing up for. I spent my own money buying supplies and took time off from work, unpaid, to make sure everything would go smoothly. The day of the party, I worked from dawn until the last guest left. It was perfect. Everyone loved it. People were raving about how organized it was, about how seamless everything felt. Mom was so proud. "You're such a lifesaver," she told me, hugging me tight. I smiled, feeling drained to my bones, but all I could think was, why does it always fall to me? I hadn't even had a chance to enjoy the party before I was scrubbing down tables and stacking chairs. Everyone else was mingling, laughing, taking group photos. Mom left a few hours later, still glowing, and I stayed behind to clean up, alone. The nagging thought kept gnawing at me. I had done this all for them, but for me, not a thing. I should have known. It didn't take long for the calls to start coming again. Just a few months after Grandpa's birthday, Christmas was around the corner. I was still recovering from the last round of stress when my mom's voice came through the phone, all sweet and pleading. "You're so good at organizing, sweetie," she said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Would you mind handling the family Christmas get-together?" It was a simple question, but I already knew where it was headed. I could hear the unspoken, "just this once," in her voice, even though it wasn't there. I'd been down this road before. I hesitated. It was Christmas. Would I really say no? I was already in it. Again. "Sure, Mom," I said, already bracing myself. This time, the event grew. Instead of the usual handful of people, it was 25. I had to rent a hall, coordinate catering, set up decorations, and make sure the schedule flowed smoothly. I ordered the food, arranged the seating, and put in hours making sure everything looked perfect. I did all of it. And when the day arrived, everything went off without a hitch. The place was decked out, twinkling lights, snowy centerpieces, a big table piled high with food. Everyone marveled at how beautiful it all was. But once again, when the night was over, I was left standing in the middle of the hall cleaning up. Everyone else had their glass of wine, chatting, posing for photos. My aunt posted a photo on Facebook with a caption that made my skin crawl. "Family pulled off a magical evening." No mention of me, nothing. Not even a "thanks for all your hard work." Just a perfect little family moment, with my name left out like I didn't even exist. It felt like that scene from a movie, where the camera zooms out slowly to show the protagonist standing alone, unnoticed, while everyone else moves on with their lives. Only I wasn't in a movie. I was just stuck. This was my life now. The next year, it wasn't a question anymore. It was an expectation. Thanksgiving, Christmas, birthdays, anniversaries, it all fell on me. No more, "Can you help?" Just, "You're doing it, right?" I was the default planner. It didn't matter that I'd barely gotten a thank you the year before, or that I was working a full-time job struggling to stay on top of things. I asked for help a few times. Thought I'd test the waters, see if anyone would step up. "Hey, maybe we can share the load this year. Make it a potluck or something." The answer was always the same. "You're just so good at it, though," they'd say. "We'd only slow you down. You've got this." That was their way of saying, "We're not doing anything, but we'll let you take all the credit." And they didn't even feel bad about it. Not really. I was just expected to keep saying yes, like it was nothing. But every thank you they gave me felt emptier than the last. I kept going, though. I didn't really have a choice. I thought maybe eventually my family would see how much I was doing and step up. But that never happened. My life started to narrow down into two things: my job at the clinic and family event planning. The job. It barely even mattered anymore. I'd gotten my medical assisting certification, but while everyone from my program seemed to be climbing into better roles, I was stuck at the front desk of a small clinic, answering phones and checking people in. It was the same routine every day. When I wasn't at work, I was organizing something else for the family: birthdays, retirements, reunions, whatever came up. They'd call me with a new favor, and I'd rush to get it done, even though I was already burned out. My free time wasn't really mine, it was theirs, and my money. That wasn't mine either. I'd start putting expenses on credit cards: $1,500 here for decorations, $2,000 there for catering. It was a mess. But I couldn't say no, not when they made me feel like I was the only one who could do it right. I even started getting creative with the lies I told myself to get through it. I'll get ahead next year, I'd say. Once I finish this, then I'll have time to focus on my career. But every time I started to believe that, something else came up. Like when I'd suggest to the family, hey, why don't we rotate who plans the events this year? Or maybe we could just do a potluck, keep it simple. Oh no, that wouldn't be the same without your touch, they'd say. You're the one who makes it special. I couldn't even get them to consider the idea of sharing the load. It was always my special touch they wanted: my time, my energy, my money, but no one ever thought about what it was doing to me. I couldn't even take extra shifts at work or go to training sessions for things I wanted to pursue because my weekends were booked solid with family events. I'd tell my boss, sorry, I've got something on my schedule. And she'd look at me with that concerned frown. One day, she pulled me aside. You know, there are promotions opening up in the office. You've been here a while. Have you thought about applying? I wanted to tell her the truth, that I wasn't applying because I was drowning in a schedule I couldn't escape, that every weekend was taken, every spare second gone. But I just nodded and said, I'm not ready yet. She looked like she didn't buy it, but she dropped it. I wasn't ready. But more than that, I didn't have the space to even think about moving forward. I felt like I was stuck in a loop, always one step behind, always sacrificing what I wanted for everyone else. My career, it felt irrelevant. Family obligations, that was my life now. And as much as I tried to hold on to any sense of what I wanted for myself, I knew I was giving it all away for nothing. Then came Jasmine's engagement. She was the cousin everyone adored, the one who always had the biggest smile and the sweetest words, the one who could get away with anything. When she announced she was getting married, everyone around me lit up. Everyone, that is, except me. Without so much as a question, Mom told me, Jasmine wants you to plan her wedding reception. You're the best at it, honey. It was like a slap in the face that I couldn't dodge. I should have said no. I wanted to say no. But of course, I didn't. Jasmine was family, and just like every other time, I was expected to step in and make her big day perfect. So I did. The wedding was going to be big. Outdoor venue, 150 guests. I coordinated everything: rentals, decor, food trucks, music, parking, you name it. It felt like it was taking over my life. I spent a month drowning in spreadsheets, making endless calls, running around picking up rentals, and stressing about every last detail. I maxed out 2 credit cards, which I didn't have the luxury to do, but it was for family, right? They'd appreciate it. At least I hoped they would. I gave up sleep. I gave up my time. I gave up everything else because if I didn't, everything would fall apart. My paid time off at work, gone. I couldn't remember the last time I had a weekend to myself. The day of the wedding was a blur of last-minute touches and running around. I was on my feet the entire time, setting up the tables, overseeing the caterers, making sure everything was on schedule. When it finally started, it looked beautiful. The guests loved it. Jasmine was radiant. Everyone marveled at how perfect everything was. But when the night ended, I was the one left cleaning up again. Everyone else was either drinking, dancing, or taking photos, but I was tearing down the decorations, lugging away trash, and packing up the rentals. I wanted to scream. Instead, I just moved faster, trying to finish it all before I completely lost it. A couple of weeks later, I saw Jasmine's honeymoon photos on Instagram. They were all over her feed. Crystal clear water in Greece, dinners on the beach, romantic sunset shots. She tagged her fiancé in every post, captioning each one with how amazing everything was. Not once did she mention me, not once did I see a thank you or couldn't have done it without you. It stung. I'd put my heart and soul into that reception, broke myself over it, and she wasn't even acknowledging it. But worse, I realized she didn't have to. She didn't have to thank me, because I was family. And family was supposed to do this stuff for free, right? My work was considered a given, expected, and somehow I let it happen. I looked at her honeymoon photos, and a bitter realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I was still paying off the rentals, still scrambling to make sure my credit cards didn't max out even more. Jasmine was in Greece, living her dream, while I was stuck here, with debt I couldn't get rid of, all because I was too afraid to say no. Family didn't owe me anything, and I was starting to wonder if I even mattered in the equation. Maybe I was just the help. The free labor. I had done it again, putting everything I had into someone else's dream and getting nothing in return. I felt like I was invisible, like my value was only measured by what I could do for them. I don't know when the panic attacks started, but they came fast, and they came hard. I'd be sitting at my desk, staring at the same report for what felt like hours, my heart hammering, sweat sticking to my back. I'd look around, wondering why everything felt like it was closing in on me. Then, I'd try to breathe, but my chest would tighten, and I couldn't catch a full breath. I'd make some excuse, step outside, and try to pull it together. It didn't always work. My insomnia didn't help either. I couldn't remember the last time I had a full night of sleep. It wasn't just the stress, it was that gnawing sense of being completely, utterly drained. My body was so used to running on fumes, I didn't even know what it felt like to rest. By the time I finally closed my eyes, I'd get about 3 or 4 hours before my brain would jerk me awake again, spinning in a whirlpool of deadlines, family events, and that gnawing feeling that I was failing somewhere, somehow, and dating. Forget it. I couldn't remember the last time I had a real date, let alone a night out with friends. Every weekend was accounted for. Birthdays, weddings, reunions, you name it. When I wasn't working at the clinic, I was knee-deep in planning and organizing, running around like a chicken with its head cut off. It felt like everyone else had a life. Everyone else got to do normal things, have a weekend off, take a trip, even go on dates. But not me. I was always busy. It was all starting to crack. I could feel the weight pressing down on me, every obligation, every call, every event. My therapist noticed. We'd been meeting for a while, and I could tell she was worried. After another round of rambling about my inability to say no, she asked the question I didn't want to hear. What would happen if you just said no? I laughed, but it was hollow. They'd lose their minds. I mean, you have no idea. It would be chaos. She didn't laugh with me. She just stared at me, her expression soft but knowing. What if that's not your problem to fix? She asked. I opened my mouth to argue, but the words got stuck, because deep down, I knew she was right. But saying no felt like walking into a storm I couldn't avoid. What would I be if I wasn't the one people turned to for help? What would they think of me? Would they even care? I can't just leave them hanging, I said, but even I knew that wasn't the real reason. I was terrified that if I stopped, if I didn't give everything, I'd be nothing. She didn't push me any further. Instead, she said something that rattled me. You're not obligated to keep saying yes. You're allowed to take care of yourself too. It didn't sink in right away, but something inside me shifted. A tiny spark of doubt, like a whisper that maybe I didn't have to be the one always doing everything. Maybe I wasn't the only one who could make these things happen. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't my responsibility to carry the weight of everyone else's happiness. The idea stuck with me. The seed was planted, and as the days passed, I couldn't shake it. What would happen if I just stopped? What if I didn't do everything, all the time, for everyone? Would they still love me? Would they even care? I was still chewing on what my therapist had said when my mom called me, and I swear I could hear her grinning before she even spoke. It was midweek, and I was barely keeping my head above water at work, juggling my regular shifts, unpaid time, and the usual family chaos. Then came the bombshell. Honey, I told everyone you're planning Grandpa's surprise 85th birthday party, she said, as if it was a casual update. He specifically asked for your special touch. I froze. I knew that wasn't true. Grandpa had never said a word to me about his party, but Mom had already made her decision, and it was clear I was being volunteered again. I opened my mouth to protest, but I already knew how this worked. I couldn't back out now without causing a scene. Mom, the party's in 3 days, I said, my voice low. How am I supposed to pull this off in 3 days? She didn't even hesitate. Oh, I know you'll make it happen. You always do. The words felt like a punch. You always do? Of course I did. I always did. I couldn't find the strength to argue. I was already trapped in the same cycle. I took the time off work, leaving me with no paid time off left. I spent over $1,200 on supplies, Decorations, food, a venue rental, the whole 9 yards. I hardly slept the next couple of nights, running on caffeine, adrenaline, and that familiar knot of dread in my stomach. I knew how this story ended. I was going to make sure the party was perfect, even if it killed me. The day of the party, everything went like clockwork. I had every detail planned out to the minute. The decorations were up, the food was hot, the music was playing, and Grandpa's surprise went off without a hitch. People were laughing, talking, and enjoying themselves. Grandpa gave his toast, choking up as he thanked everyone for being there. It was a beautiful moment, but it was also the same damn moment I had been dreading. Once the party wound down and everyone was full and happy, I found myself alone again, cleaning up. While the rest of the family gathered around in cliques, sipping wine, taking group photos, I was left to fold chairs, stack tables, and load everything into my car. I watched them, pretending like nothing was wrong. They acted like it was just another evening, unaware, or pretending not to notice that I was the one doing all the work. Then I overheard my aunt talking to my cousin as they headed to the parking lot. "We're lucky we don't have to hire an event planner," my aunt said, and they both laughed. I froze. Lucky. They were laughing. The kind of laugh that said, "We all know exactly what's going on here, but we don't care." I wasn't part of the family helping out. I was just a convenience, someone they could rely on for free labor without a second thought. The words hit harder than I expected. My stomach turned, and for the first time that night, I felt tears burning in my eyes. They knew. They all knew. They knew I'd always say yes. They knew I'd never push back, and they were using it. When I got home that night, I broke. I wasn't even fully aware of how the tears came out. I just collapsed on my bed, shaking. They knew exactly what they were doing, and I had let them get away with it for so long. It wasn't love. It wasn't appreciation. It was just manipulation. I was the person they could always count on, the one who'd always sacrifice herself for everyone else. And I had played into it, over and over again. That night, I couldn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling, knowing something had to change. But what? I didn't even know where to start. All I knew was that, for the first time in a long time, I couldn't pretend it was okay anymore. When my sister got engaged, I knew right away things were about to take a turn. We'd always been close, but I could feel the shift the moment she announced it. She booked the venue almost immediately, on a whim it felt like, and then, without even asking, announced that I'd be planning and managing the entire wedding. Not, "Would you mind helping?" Or, "Could you take care of a few things?" No, it was just, "I'm going to need you to do everything else." Like it was obvious. Like there was no one else who could do it. And she wasn't even going to let me be a bridesmaid. Just the unpaid coordinator, the organizer, again. Something in me snapped. But I didn't say anything. How could I? She was my sister. I couldn't say no to her. So I did what I always did. I took over. I went into planning mode like a machine, coordinating everything from the flowers to the caterers to the photographer. It wasn't just the details, though. It was everything. The seating, the timeline, the rehearsal dinner. I had to make sure everything was perfect. And it wasn't just a small affair. The wedding was huge. We're talking 200 guests. I threw myself into it. I spent $15,000 on the wedding. I didn't have that kind of money. But I had credit cards, and I didn't care anymore. I borrowed against my retirement account, convinced that it'd all be worth it. It was family, right? I'd just work it off. I'd pay it back later. But the money wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what I lost along the way. I didn't sleep, not for weeks. I lost 10 pounds because I couldn't eat. I was running on pure stress and caffeine, working late into the night, making phone calls, dealing with issues, fixing problems before they even happened. I didn't get to enjoy any of it. Not the dress shopping, not the planning, nothing. I was just the invisible engine behind everything. And when the wedding day finally came, I was a shell of myself. The day went off without a hitch. Of course it did. Everyone told me how incredible the wedding was, how seamless it all felt. I stood in the background, wearing the coordinator hat, never once being able to enjoy the moments that should have been mine to enjoy too. My sister was the star of the show, and I was the one holding everything up behind the scenes. Again. A few weeks later, a local lifestyle magazine picked up the wedding for a feature. I found out when my sister sent me a link to the article. She was beaming as she forwarded the pages. "Look, it's in the magazine. We did it all ourselves with help from family." There it was, right there in print. We did it all ourselves. She didn't mention me, not once. Not even a thank you for the $15,000 I'd spent or the hours of work I'd poured into every single detail. Nothing. I wasn't just overlooked, I was erased. Her quote made it clear. All the work, the stress, the money, everything I did meant nothing. I was just help. I stared at the screen, the words swimming in front of me, the silence so loud I couldn't hear anything else. That was it. That was the final straw. The one thing that broke something deep inside me. I should have been angry. I should have been furious, but I wasn't. I was hollow. I felt like I'd given everything for this family, my time, my money, my energy, and none of it was ever enough. I'd done it all, and somehow it still didn't matter. I wasn't even allowed to be part of the story. That night, I sat in my apartment, the weight of everything pressing down on me. I didn't know what to do. My body felt exhausted, like I had nothing left. But I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep sacrificing myself for a family that didn't even see me. I couldn't keep being the unpaid coordinator, the invisible laborer in my own life. For the first time in a long time, I felt something real. Anger, and it was the only thing that gave me any kind of clarity. I was done. I didn't know what that looked like yet, but I knew I couldn't stay stuck in this cycle any longer. It was time to take a step back, to finally start living my own life. Thanksgiving 2024 was the breaking point. I could feel the tension building for weeks. My family's expectations were suffocating. The guest list had ballooned to 40 people. 40. And of course, I was the one who had to organize everything. The shopping, the cooking, the setup, it was always me. Every single year. I stood in the store, staring at the cart piled high with groceries, turkeys, stuffing, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, rolls. The total on my calculator kept rising. $1,400. I could feel my pulse pounding in my temples. I was already overwhelmed, and I hadn't even started cooking. The weight of it all hit me like a truck. They'd never even asked me if I was okay with it. They just expected me to take on the whole thing, to make Thanksgiving happen like I had no life outside of making sure their day was perfect. Something in me snapped. I didn't even think. I just grabbed the basket, walked out of the store, and didn't look back. I went home, grabbed a bag, and drove straight to a cheap spa resort on the outskirts of town. I checked in, turned off my phone, and walked into the silence. It was the first moment in... God, I couldn't even remember how long it had been since I had any real peace. Back home, the panic set in the moment I left. I could already feel it. My family was scrambling, calling me over and over. I knew exactly what was happening. No one knew how to cook. No one could handle the chaos of the dinner. They relied on me for everything, and when I wasn't there to do it, the whole thing crumbled. I ate breakfast alone in the quiet of the spa, the simple hum of the air conditioning filling the room as I sipped my tea. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe. I could actually taste my food without rushing, without the constant anxiety gnawing at my stomach. I smiled for the first time in days. The chaos back home was real. I could only imagine the scene. People running around, asking each other how to make mashed potatoes, trying to figure out how to cook a turkey that was still frozen. I knew the calls were flying in, the texts flooding my phone, but I didn't care, not for once, not this time. I stayed off my phone. I didn't check anything. I wasn't going to let myself get dragged back into their mess. They had done this to me for years, and I was finally letting go. By the time I came back, the holiday was in full disaster mode. My phone was blowing up. Over 50 missed calls, at least that many texts. My mom's voice was the loudest, frantic and pissed off, demanding to know where I was, why I wasn't answering. She was angry. They were all angry. They'd had to order takeout, sandwiches of all things. I couldn't help but feel a strange satisfaction in that. Let them scramble. Let them figure it out for once. I opened the door to my apartment and let the silence wrap around me. It was exactly what I needed. No one was going to guilt trip me anymore. No one was going to manipulate me into sacrificing my peace. I ate my own Thanksgiving dinner, alone, in the comfort of my quiet space. I had a simple salad and roasted vegetables. It was calm, it was peaceful, it was mine. The family tried to guilt trip me when I finally checked my messages. "You ruined the holiday," they said. "How could you do this to us?" I just stared at the screen. The guilt they tried to shove on me bounced off like water on a duck's back. This time, I didn't feel a thing. They could blame me all they wanted, but I wasn't the one who had ruined anything. I had finally taken control, even if it meant causing a little chaos in their world. For once, I wasn't the one picking up the pieces. For once, I wasn't the one making everything perfect. And honestly, it felt damn good. It was only a few days after Thanksgiving when my parents showed up at my apartment, unannounced, of course. They knocked on my door, and I could feel my heart pick up speed in my chest. They weren't here to chat. I knew that look in their eyes, serious, demanding. "We need to talk," my mom said, her voice tight. Dad stood behind her, silent as usual, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. I didn't invite them in. I didn't need to. I stood in the doorway, leaning against it, arms crossed. I wasn't backing down this time. I knew what they wanted. "Come on, sweetie," my mom started, stepping forward. "We've been through this. You know you're the best at this stuff. We need you for Christmas." She put on her best pleading face. "The family is counting on you. We can't do it without you." I shook my head, a tight, exhausted laugh escaping my lips. "No, you don't get to guilt trip me anymore. I'm done. No more free event planning for anyone." My dad finally spoke, his voice low, almost pleading. "You're being unreasonable, kid. Christmas is important to your mom. She just wants everything to go smoothly." He glanced at my mom, who was watching me, trying to gauge my reaction. I wasn't buying it, not anymore. "I don't care," I said, my voice firmer than it had been in years. "You don't get to treat me like free labor anymore. You don't get to use me to make your lives easier and then discard me when the party's over." My mom flinched, her eyes widening. It hurt her, I could see that. But I didn't feel guilty. Not this time. I wasn't going to let them manipulate me back into their cycle. "You can't just say no to Christmas," my mom pleaded. "You're family, honey. You know how much this means to all of us." "Exactly," I shot back. "I'm family, and that's why I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not doing everything for you just so you can ignore me and move on to the next thing. I matter too." Dad tried to jump in, his voice more forceful now. "This is ridiculous. It's Christmas. Don't you want to spend the holidays with your family? This isn't about you. It's about being there for each other." "It is about me," I snapped. "I've been there for you every single time. But I'm done. I'm not running around, spending my money, my time, my energy to make everything perfect for everyone else while I get nothing in return." They were quiet for a beat, but I could see the wheels turning in their heads. They weren't used to me standing my ground. They tried one more tactic, the one that always worked. "I just don't understand, sweetie. Don't you care about Christmas?" my mom asked, the guilt thick in her voice. "We're your family. We need you." "Yeah," I said, letting the silence hang between us. "And I need to take care of myself for once." The rest of the conversation was mostly quiet pleas, arguments, and long pauses that only made me more certain of my decision. I said no. Christmas would go on without me, and they could figure it out on their own. When Christmas came around, I kept my distance. They called me, of course. They begged. They even offered to pay me this time, but I didn't take the bait. I told them, "No, I'm not doing it. Figure it out." The morning after Christmas, I woke up to a string of angry texts. The party had been a disaster. The hall wasn't decorated right, the food wasn't enough. People were complaining. Someone had gotten the wrong drink order. I didn't even read them all. I could feel my stomach clench with the familiar guilt, but I fought it down. They had to learn. By the time they finally came around, weeks later, the dynamic had shifted. I wasn't the one holding everything together anymore. They'd learned what it felt like to scramble, to not have everything handed to them on a silver platter. It wasn't a clean lesson, but it was a lesson. And when they apologized, I didn't need to say, "I told you so." I just looked at them and said, "Maybe next time you'll respect my time and my boundaries." They nodded, genuinely apologetic, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control over my own life. Once I said no to Christmas, I knew things were changing. For the first time, I felt like I had control over my own life. But I also knew I couldn't just go back to the same old routine. I had no idea what was next, but I knew I needed to build something for myself, something that had nothing to do with being the family's unpaid event planner. So I started my own event coordination business. I remember the first client. They were a couple from a corporate office who needed help planning their company's annual holiday party. They didn't know me. They didn't care about my family. They just wanted someone who could do the job. And I did. They paid me what I was worth. They treated me with respect. It was like a breath of fresh air. I got paid. I didn't have to beg for anything. Word spread. Slowly, at first. A wedding here, a product launch there. Small events, but they were mine. I started getting calls for corporate events, for weddings, for private parties. People actually paid full price, and I didn't have to justify it. I was earning a living, doing what I loved, on my terms. It was real, and it felt so damn good. But my family, they didn't like it. At first, they tried to lure me back with promises. "We'll pay you this time," they said. "We'll give you credit, you'll get recognition." But it wasn't about money or recognition. It was about respect, and they still didn't get that. I said no every time, every single time. "I'm not doing it. I've moved on," I told them. "You can figure it out like everyone else." The thing is, over time, they did figure it out. They learned to plan things themselves. The events weren't as big or as glamorous. The guest lists got smaller, the budgets tighter. But there was something different. They worked together. It wasn't perfect, but it was collaborative. No more just expecting me to drop everything and make their visions come true while I stayed invisible in the background. I didn't miss being the unpaid planner, not at all. But there were times when I missed the family I thought I had, the ones I used to think cared about me beyond what I could do for them. Now, when I organize events, it's because I want to. Not because I'm obligated to, not because someone made me feel like I had to. Every thank you I get means something. I'm not just a body in the background. I'm the one people are paying because they respect what I do. And for the first time in my life, I'm finally earning a living from my skills. It's on my terms. And that feels like freedom.